The studio lights were still warm when Robin Williams grabbed a live chicken off Martha Stewart's kitchen island and held it up over his head like a trophy. The crew froze. The director froze. Martha herself, mid-sentence about brining a turkey, simply stopped and stared. For 3 full seconds, nobody in that studio knew whether to laugh or call security. But almost nobody in that room understood the real reason Robin Williams had come to Martha Stewart's show that morning. It was not for the movie he was supposed to promote. It was not for the laughs, though there would be plenty of those before the hour was through. He had come because somewhere behind the cameras, in a hallway lined with prop closets and folded linens, a frightened young woman was waiting, and Robin Williams already knew her name. Nobody had told him to find her. He had simply decided to. And what happened next, between the chaos and the cameras, would become one of the quietest, strangest, most tender stories anyone on that set had ever witnessed. It was the summer of 2007. Robin was in the middle of promoting his new comedy, License to Wed, and his publicist had booked him a spot on The Martha Stewart Show, taped inside a converted television studio in Long Island City, New York. Martha had rebuilt her empire from the ground up after a difficult year away from the spotlight, and her live daytime show had become something close to sacred to her. Everything was choreographed, every apron was pressed, every herb was measured to the gram. Guests were briefed for 20 minutes beforehand on where to stand, what not to touch, and above all, never to interrupt Martha while she was demonstrating a technique. Robin Williams read the briefing card in the green room, according to people who worked there that day, and simply laughed. He folded it in half, tucked it into his jacket pocket, and said more to himself than anyone else, "We'll see how that goes." When he walked onto the set, the audience erupted before Martha even finished his introduction. He kissed her hand like a European count, then immediately pivoted into a Scottish accent, complimenting her on her vera fine countertops. Martha, who prided herself on control, visibly did not know what was about to happen to her show. And that was precisely the moment Robin loved best. He spotted the chicken in its little wire pen beside the cooking island, meant only as a rustic prop for a segment on farm-fresh eggs, and something in his eyes lit up the way it did right before a room lost control of itself. He scooped the bird into his arms mid-sentence, turned to the camera, and began narrating its entire imagined life story in 6 different voices, including, unmistakably, a documentary narrator impression that sounded exactly like David Attenborough describing a rare species in the wild. The audience was howling. Martha, to her enormous credit, leaned into it, swatting at him with a wooden spoon while trying to reclaim her cutting board. For nearly 4 minutes, what had been a calm cooking demonstration turned into an unscripted comedy sketch that no one on the production team had planned, budgeted, or rehearsed. A tray of deviled eggs went sliding off the counter. A production assistant lunged to catch a falling ceramic bowl and missed. Somewhere near camera 2, a floor director was speaking urgently into his headset, trying to figure out whether they were still, technically, filming a cooking show. Robin set the chicken down gently, almost tenderly, back into its pen, then turned to Martha with a completely straight face and said, "Now, let's talk about your eggs." The audience lost what little composure it had left. But here's the part almost no one watching from home ever knew. During the commercial break that followed, while makeup artists rushed in to blot Martha's forehead and wardrobe adjusted Robin's slightly chicken-feather-dusted jacket, Robin quietly asked a stagehand a question that had nothing to do with the show at all. He asked who the young woman was standing near the prop closet, the one who had been laughing harder than anyone in the building, but who kept glancing toward the door every few minutes, like she was waiting for a phone call she was terrified of receiving. The stagehand hesitated, unsure whether it was his place to say anything. Robin simply said, "It's all right. I just want to know her name." Her name was Diane. She was 26 years old, a junior props assistant who had been with the show less than a year. The kind of job that paid little and demanded everything. She had grown up in Queens, watching Robin Williams on television with her mother, the two of them curled on a second-hand couch, rewinding the same VHS tapes of Mrs. Doubtfire and Aladdin until the ribbon nearly wore through. Her mother had taught her that laughter was something you could survive almost anything with. And now, at 58 years old, her mother was in a hospital across the river, 3 days into a stroke recovery so uncertain that doctors were using words like "wait and see." Diane had begged her supervisor to let her keep working that week. She needed the paycheck, yes, but more than that, she needed somewhere to put her hands and her mind so she wouldn't collapse from the waiting. Robin did not go marching over dramatically. That was never his way when something actually mattered. Instead, while the crew reset the studio for the next segment, he wandered, seemingly aimless, toward the prop closet, picking up a wooden spoon here, examining a ceramic rooster there, cracking a small joke with a lighting technician along the way, so that nothing about his path looked deliberate. When he reached Diane, he simply held up the ceramic rooster and said, in the voice of a bored museum tour guide, "And here we have the lesser-spotted Stewart rooster, native to Connecticut, known for its extraordinary glaze." Diane laughed, despite herself, the kind of laugh that comes out sideways when someone is exhausted and trying not to cry. And Robin, watching her face carefully, the way he always watched faces, said quietly, "Rough week?" She hadn't meant to tell a celebrity anything, but something about the way he asked, without performance, without an audience, made the whole story spill out before she could stop it. Her mother, the hospital in Elmhurst, the stroke, the fear that she might not get back in time if something happened during a live taping. Robin listened without interrupting once, which people who worked with him often said was rarer than any joke he ever told. When she finished, embarrassed, wiping her eyes with the back of her wrist, he didn't offer platitudes. He asked her mother's name. She told him it was Rosa. He nodded slowly, like he was filing it away somewhere important, and said, "Rosa raised herself a funny kid. I can tell. You've got the timing." What happened over the next 20 minutes has been described by more than one person who worked on that production, though never publicized at the time, because Robin specifically asked that it not be. During the second commercial break, while Martha's team scrambled to fix a broken egg timer prop, Robin quietly asked a producer for 5 minutes and disappeared with Diane into the hallway near the dressing rooms. He did not do a bit for her. He did not perform. He sat on an overturned equipment case, and for those 5 minutes, he simply talked to her like a person who understood exactly what it felt like to sit beside a hospital bed and not know what to do with your hands. People who caught pieces of the conversation later said he told her about his own father's long illness, about the specific, useless guilt of being somewhere else when someone you love is suffering. He told her that laughing in the middle of it did not mean she loved her mother any less. It meant she was still standing. Then, according to a stage manager who witnessed it, Robin asked for a piece of paper. He wrote something on it, folded it twice, and pressed it into Diane's hand, telling her not to open it until she was alone. He made her promise. She nodded, unable to speak, and tucked it into her jacket pocket exactly the way Robin had once tucked away Martha's briefing card. When the floor manager called places for the final segment, Robin stood, straightened his jacket, and turned back into the man the cameras were waiting for, as if a switch had been flipped. Nobody in that hallway said a word about what had just happened. It simply became one more quiet thing that had occurred backstage on a day when the headlines, if there had been any, would only have mentioned a chicken. The final segment of the show went beautifully. Martha, still slightly disheveled from the earlier chaos, managed to reclaim her cooking demonstration with the kind of composure that had built her entire empire. Robin, for his part, was somehow both fully unpredictable and, in hindsight, gentler than he had been all morning, as though something backstage had settled him. He complimented her genuinely on her cooking technique between jokes, and at one point, unscripted, reached over and squeezed her hand, and told the audience that Martha Stewart did not get enough credit for how hard she worked to build something beautiful out of very little. Martha, caught off guard by the sincerity, later told colleagues it was one of the only times a guest on her show had made her, briefly, unable to speak. Diane did not open the folded note until she was on the subway home that evening, rattling beneath the East River toward the hospital where her mother lay recovering. She unfolded it carefully, expecting a joke, maybe a doodle, something to make her smile the way everything about that morning had. Instead, in Robin's fast, slanted handwriting, was a phone number, and beneath it, a single sentence. "Call this number tomorrow and tell them Robin sent you. Rosa's hospital bills are covered. Go be funny. Go make her laugh." Diane read it 4 times before she believed it was real. The number belonged to Robin's personal assistant, who confirmed, the following morning, exactly what the note promised. Robin Williams, a man Diane had spoken to for perhaps 30 minutes of her entire life, had quietly arranged to cover her mother's mounting hospital costs, and had done it without a single camera, a single press release, or a single word to anyone who might have turned it into a headline. Martha Stewart, by most accounts, never fully found out how far Robin's kindness had gone that day. She knew only what she witnessed on the surface. Years later, in interviews reflecting on guests who had passed through her studio, she would describe Robin Williams as one of the few people who could walk into a controlled room and leave it somehow more alive than he found it, chaotic and generous in the same breath. She remembered the chicken. She remembered the deviled eggs sliding off the counter. What she did not know, what almost no one knew until years afterward, was that while millions of viewers were laughing at a comedian holding a live chicken over his head, that same man had quietly noticed a stranger's grief in a hallway and decided, without being asked, that it mattered more than the segment, more than the schedule, more than his own reputation for chaos. Diane's mother recovered. It was slow, and it was frightening, and there were setbacks along the way that no folded note could fix. But Diane stayed by her side through all of it, no longer terrified of the hospital bills stacking up behind every decision. She kept working in television for years afterward, carrying with her, quite literally, a small laminated copy of Robin's note tucked permanently into her wallet. She never asked for anything more from him, and by all accounts, he never mentioned it again either. Not to her, not to Martha, not to the press. It was simply a debt he felt like paying, quietly, in a hallway most people would forget by lunchtime. People who worked with Robin for years said the note he left Diane did not surprise them at all. It was simply how he moved through the world when he thought no one important was watching. Those closest to him remembered how, after his old friend and Juilliard roommate Christopher Reeve was paralyzed in a riding accident, Robin showed up at his hospital bedside dressed as a wild-eyed Russian doctor, demanding an immediate proctology exam, just to make him laugh before the fear could win. They remembered how, on more than one film set, he quietly arranged for insurance costs to be covered for crew members he barely knew by name, never asking for credit, never wanting it mentioned in the trade papers. Diane's folded note was not an isolated act of kindness from a famous man having a generous afternoon. It was simply Robin being Robin, the same way he had always been, long before any camera in Long Island City ever caught him holding a chicken over his head. This is the story so many people missed while they were laughing at a chicken on a cooking show. It is the story of a man who could turn a controlled, polished studio into complete pandemonium in under 5 minutes, and who could, in the very same morning, sit on an overturned equipment case and give a stranger back her ability to breathe. Robin Williams built his career on the idea that laughter could save people. What almost nobody knew was how literally he meant it, and how far he was willing to go, off-camera, unrecorded, and unrewarded, to prove it to a frightened young woman named Diane, whose mother, thanks to a folded note and 30 quiet minutes, got to watch her daughter grow old.